It's great to be here on the podcast with my friend Steven Mackay, manager of the mighty Brora Rangers. Hi there, Steven.
How you doing, Donny? Good to see you.
You too. It's not very often I get to interview the manager of my hometown team.
It's a great experience for us both, Donny.
I know. So I'm noticing all the mural on the wall. Is that the welding?
Yeah, this is the boardroom of Longfields. This is the home of the welding, holy grail of welding.
Oh, and tell me, so what are you doing just now? Is it, work-wise? I know you do the manager at Brora, but you're involved with the welding industry.
Yeah, so I'm the facility director for a company called Longfields. We're based down in Dunfermline, Donny. We're part of a group of businesses that form the Envoy Group. We fabricate and weld process equipment for the pharmaceutical industry, the refineries in and around Grangemouth and Mossmorton and Fife and throughout the UK really. So it's close to Christmas, but we're still working away.
Still working hard. And we'll probably come back to that later on in the interviews, because I think it's a fascinating area, how you balance the working full time and managing a football club as well, because there's huge demands in it. And as you know, being in the game all the time you've been in it, it's 24/7 thinking about it, isn't it?
It is, Donny. It does. You don't actually realise how much it consumes you. Just in terms of thinking about football, the job that I work in is very, very demanding in itself, and then on top of that, you've got the requirements to fulfil, as Brora Rangers manager as well. So that's one thing that I've definitely found over the last couple of years is if it's not work you're thinking about, it's football, and it can consume you in a good way, in a positive way. It does consume you.
And tell me a little bit, Stephen, I think I must have just missed you at Ross County when you were at Ross County, and I was there with Robbo and Parky. What was your journey into the game?
Just like any young kid growing up in the Highlands, Donny, there's not much for us to do, So football is something that was just ingrained in me from an early age. I grew up in a small village called Port Mahomet until I was about 12, and like I said, that's all we did was just football. Just in school, out with school, and then I moved to Invergordon. And it was a little bit more serious there. It was more kind of professionally run, and a lot of good players in Invergordon. I think Invergordon historically has always grown, a decent level of players. So when I moved to Invergordon, it became kind of more serious for me. The standard was certainly improved, and that's all I did. You went to school, and then afterwards you played football. And it's not until you kind of get to the age I'm at now that you actually appreciate like all the guys that put time and effort into running coaching sessions. You've got guys like Edwin Skinner, Davy Valentine, Alan Monroe, all these guys that put on youth clubs and go with so much effort and commitment to hold all these sessions for you. And you're a kid, you turn up and you train, but it's not until you kind of look back now and you think, these guys were fundamental and so pivotal, not just in my career, but so many young kids' careers in Rossshire,
Yeah, it's incredible. When we think these guys, how influential they are to us as people, and it was all, they didn't get anything to do it, they didn't get paid, they were usually just full on, wasn't it?
Unbelievable. They didn't get paid a penny, but like their desire, their passion for wanting to train kids and see them develop and move on, and even now you go and at Brora we train in Invergordon for pre-season. And the first man that's there is Edwin, and he's still there wanting to watch and ask questions and see how the players are getting on. So people like that are so important to local communities and developing young footballers.
I think they are, and isn't it the thing? I remember, I know that name, Edwin Skinner from years ago, and he, as you say, that's a passion. It's unbelievable. That's just a passion for the game, isn't it? Just amazing.
Incredible, and it's so infectious as well, Donny. Just seeing these people that just love the game, and I think that rubbed off on me.
And when did you go into the Ross County setup then? How old were you when you get involved there?
Yeah, well, it was another name that I've not probably mentioned was Tommy Reagan. He got me over to Ross County. I think I was probably about 14. But there was a whole host of players from Invergordon: Dave Calder, Graham Monroe, John Valentine, Ian McGregor. There's a few of us, so we all went to school together. We all played for Invergordon together. Then we all kind of went over to Ross County. So that's kind of when it started, about 14. These guys some of them were miles ahead of me in terms of standard, and I was very aware of that at the time, but just continued to train and work hard, and luckily enough, when I was 17, got offered a YTS, so took the jump, as you do, and left school after 5th year and went full time at Ross County. And I think it wasn't until I actually went full time that I could see that I was developing. My confidence grew, and I didn't probably have that inferiority kind of complex that I had in the younger years, when I actually felt that I probably belonged there, albeit I was still a young boy, and training with the first team at the time, because the setup at Ross County was very different to what it is now. There was only a handful of experienced first team players, and then 6 kind of YTS. We all just trained together, so that was a bit of a baptism of fire for us in one respect, but you could see all of our games improve so quickly, even in the first few months. And
did you enjoy it, going and playing full time and being involved full time?
I absolutely loved it. Loved it. Neil Cooper was the manager at the time, and again, quiet, kind of introverted Highlander from Invergordon, getting thrown into that environment was pretty intimidating. But again, it was kind of sink or swim moment for me, and you just had to get used to it very, very quickly and find your feet, because it was ruthless. Although Coops was a superb guy and he was very, very good with us, he demanded high standards. So I think for me, it developed me not as a footballer first and foremost, but my character, my personality. That environment developed me as well. But yeah, absolutely loved it. Loved every day going to training. Was it what you thought it would be when you went full time? I wasn't too sure. I didn't have any sort of many preconceptions of what it might look like. Probably in my head, I thought you would just train all day, every day. You don't really consider all the duties that you had to do back then, and sweep the stands and clean the boots and clean some of the first team players' cars. I'm pretty sure that wasn't in the job description, but that was thrown in as well. But again, it was good character building. You had to perform your duties as well as your training. So yeah, I probably didn't expect that element of it, but something that looking back, I still think it was good for my development, and it helped keep me grounded as well, albeit at the time Ross County were only a kind of 3rd division or League 2 club as it is now. But it must have been an exciting time at to be involved in county there, wasn't it? Because that was the the period where they were going up through the leagues, and when you look back at it now, it's quite a pivotal time for the club. I think it was an amazing time, because, like you say, there was so much change. There was the ambition was there from Roy. The ambition was there from Coops as well. So it was constantly changing and transitioning, because we were a League 2 club, and then very, very quickly became a League 1 club, then a Championship team, and the players were changing constantly, and you were having to adapt, and as the standards improved, you had to improve as well. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there. So yeah, it was a really interesting period in the club's history in terms of the progression we made through the leagues. It was just unfortunate that we didn't quite make it to the Premier League at that time. We just fell short on a number of occasions, but it was a wonderful period in my career, and a wonderful period to be at the club at the time. Definitely. If you look back at that now, Stephen, when where you are just now, what do you think over that period? What was the big things you learned as a player in that period? About how to play the game. I think just the strength of character required to make it at that level. It's something that naturally I never felt that I was a strong character, and it's something I always felt that I had to work at, especially on the mental side of things. Sometimes you can talk yourself out of things, or your brain can tell you a lot of stories. Your confidence can hit rock bottom, especially if you're not performing. So I think you know, and it wasn't until I got a little bit older that I actually understood and appreciated that. But I think that's something that you learn from full-time football is that you do require a thick skin, if you like, because you're constantly getting judged, whether it's by the manager, by your teammates, or even by fans, and that's a daily occurrence, whether it's in training or then performing on a Saturday. So you've got to be able to deal with that, irrespective of what level you're playing at.
Yeah, I think that's a good word to use, isn't it? Because that judgment's always there. You know, it's always there, isn't it, from other people, you know, around you. So it's how you deal with that. If I know, as long as I've known you, probably you've always been very fit and a fitness fanatic. I was quite surprised when you said to me you weren't always like that. What was the change there? When did that happen?
It's probably something that I've got a bit of regret about, Donnie, to be honest with you, because it's something that didn't really occur until I was 28, was when I really got into it. And it was one of my best mates, a guy called John Valentine, who you know was into his fitness, hit the gym a lot, and educated himself on the benefits of a healthy kind of lifestyle. And he educated me, and like I said, I was only kind of 28 at the time, and you know, I started to listen to what he said, and I could see the results that he was getting from eating well and going to the gym. So I just I copied him essentially, and it was had a massive impact on how I performed. And at that time, I was only playing at the Highland League level. I wasn't full time at that point. So there's an argument to say that perhaps the level wasn't really high, but you know, in terms of my level of performances, I saw a massive difference just in being a lot fitter, felt a lot sharper, stronger. My confidence was a lot higher, and it had quite a profound impact on my Highland League career in terms of my performances from there, and first and foremost, and then going on to play for Brora, and it allowed me to kind of prolong my career as well. So it was great that I stumbled across it and implemented it into my game, but just a little bit frustrating that I didn't do it when I was full time.
I think what you're saying though, Stephen, and I was going to raise that, is a key point about going to the gym. You know, and I've been in different environments where it was been pointed out to people, it's not just about bulking up and getting big and strong, isn't it? It's about how that affects your performance, isn't it?
It's everything. It's actually, you know, one of the things I found was injury prevention. I was really lucky throughout my whole career. I never really sustained a major injury, but you know, from playing in the Highland League, there's a lot of late challenges that go in, and there's some centre halves that want to rough you up. And I found, you know, going to the gym and eating right, I just felt that my recovery was good. I felt that I never really picked up any injuries, no real niggles or strains. And you know, I think from 28 to, you know, just recently, I've not really been injured. So that's one thing that one of the big benefits of it, as well as being able to get around the park and being able to, you know, make runs and improve my fitness levels. It was the gym aspect of it that I felt in terms of injury prevention.
You know, where you're saying about the late tackles in the Highland League, kind of, but you know, and no, certainly when you were at Brora, and it wasn't just at Brora, I would have said throughout the league, you know, I certainly noticed you were involved there with probably a revolution in how the game was, isn't it? You know, very high, very quickly, I would say. Did you notice that happening?
Sorry, Donnie, it broke up. It froze a little bit. I didn't catch that question.
I was saying, you know, we're talking about the Highland League and you know, laughing about the late tackles. But when I remember seeing, especially when you joined Brora and Brora around that time, and the Highland League in general, there was a bit of a revolution that went on in the standard, definitely within the top quarter of a teams. Were you aware that was happening?
Yeah, we were pretty aware of certainly the standard Brora, because you know the transition was very, very quick, and you know we were recruiting players that, you know, a few months prior were competing in the Premier League, and regular players in the Premier League, you know, Grant Neuro, Ross Tokeby, Richie Britton, Stuart Kettlewell, you know, players like that. So we were very aware of the standard of our team first and foremost, dramatically changed. But I think, like you say, throughout the Highland League, there was, Cove and for Martins and teams like that were improving their squads, and the standard definitely did improve. And these games were always tough games against these types of teams. And then you were seeing it in the Scottish Cup when Highland League teams were going and travelling, down south to play League One or League Two teams, and they weren't just competing in these games; they were actually beating these teams. So we could see that there was certainly within that period that the standard of some of the teams in the Highland League and Brora being one of them dramatically increased for sure.
And when you were playing, Stephen, and I know it was only a couple of weeks ago that you hung up your boots. Was it last week or the week before?
2 weeks ago, yeah.
And
bad decision, I think.
I was laughing. If you listened to my recording with Kenny Miller, Kenny, I said to Kenny, "You've just finished playing," and he says, "Oh, they might be back out yet."
Just keep them in the cupboard just in case,
I know. So when you look back at your career in Brora, playing, what's been the highlights of actually playing?
I think, when I joined Brora, season prior to that, I was playing at Neuro, and we were building a really decent squad at Neuro. I think the last season I was there, we finished third, and there was aspirations to go on and win the league. And then the move to Brora was a bit of a funny one in a lot of people's eyes because they just finished second bottom. I think they shipped about 120 goals, but Ben, who obviously we're both familiar with, had a bit of a vision, and he kind of cast that vision, and I believed in it, and I wanted to be part of it. So myself and David Hind and Dale Gillespie, I think were the first three players that moved to Brora as part of this kind of new journey, if you like. So first and foremost, that was the lure, and then being able to then implement the vision and win the league after the second season. I think that's probably the highlight, just because it was a massive transition. Brora over that period were used to losing more games than they won, and some games they were losing quite heavily, and that must have been tough for everyone connected with the club. But to see the change in the club and the fans and kind of the joy of them experiencing what they hadn't experienced before, and then Brora winning their first Highland League title, I think that has to be the highlight of my Brora career. Although there've been a lot, Donny, to be fair. I've been very fortunate that been part of such a successful team and playing with some exceptional players.
I know that probably I could imagine the excitement up in Brora when you win it compared to when I was growing up. Certainly, winning the qualifying cup was the big one with Bobby Duffy and Dugga and Don Mackay and all that. So
I remember watching footage of that when they won it, and the amount of fans that kind of turned out that day, and the kind of euphoria that surrounded it. And then the first bit of silverware that we then won in that new era was the North of Scotland Cup. We beat Nairn at Grant Street Park 3-0, and the amount of fans that turned up for that game was just incredible. And I love looking back on the photos and the footage of that day because it was just a phenomenal day. It was great to see the fans kind of reliving the kind of years gone by when they won it previously.
And here's a question, Zara. What do you think the difference is between saying, you mentioned Nairn not quite getting it, and and with all respect to Nairn, and Brora going and getting it in a short. Football's a game with tight margins. What do you think the difference is from just about being there as a team or a club, really?
Yeah, I think this hasn't been disrespectful to Nairn, but I think Nairn were quite careful in the players that they recruited, and you almost felt that they didn't want to really kind of make a big statement or go and sign too many big players at once, and it was almost like systematically they would add a couple of players a season to the squad, and then that would satisfy them, and then they would see if it would progress, and then they would maybe take a call on it. But the Brora model, and again, Ben's driven the model in terms of he knows how to make businesses successful, and there's a formula there, which he's kind of moved into the football aspect. And his philosophy was just try and recruit the best players in the area, and that doesn't always give you success. So it was down to the mentality of the players. And I think when you're recruiting players like Joe Mallon, Grant Monroe, Ross Tokley's, Xander Sutherland's, and all these guys are exceptional players first and foremost, which obviously helps, but the character of these players, they have high standards, they demand standards from others, and we just developed that squad where everyone knew the kind of minimum requirements for playing for Brora, and if anyone dropped below that, they knew that they were going to be held accountable by their teammates. And I don't think Nairn had that, or certainly didn't have enough players of that ilk, and I think that was the difference.
So there was a right kind of, as you said, that's a great word there, professional standards driven by, you know, it started off a core of players, and then everyone else kind of stepped up to it, was it?
It was just, we all knew what the objective was. We all knew what the philosophy was and the goal, and we all knew that in order to get there, we had to perform at a certain level. And we did that week in, week out, and just almost, it wasn't by fear. It was just by, you know, the fact that everyone wanted to win the league, and everyone knew what was required from their performances week in, week out. That it just created a huge amount of momentum, and we knew that if we dropped below, then we would likely lose games, and no one was prepared to do that.
That's you know, it's a great description of it, Steven. And I would like to go on and ask you about, you know, you for a while there, as you said, just up to a fortnight ago, you were doing. I was speaking to Terry Butcher yesterday, and Terry was talking initially at one point about how difficult it was to be a player manager. You know, that was one of the things he did after he stopped playing for a little bit before going full time into managing. You did that for a while, wasn't it? You were playing and managing as well. How did you manage that transition, and how did you do it?
I found it really tough, Donny. You know, transitioning from a player first and foremost into being a manager was tough enough, but then also doing it while playing it, I find it really challenging, because you're on the park and you're trying to focus on your own game first and foremost, because you don't want to let your team or your teammates down. But then you're thinking about the players around you, you're thinking about the opposition, and I just found that it really consumed me. And you know, the first season I played the majority of games, and I actually had a really good support from Dave Calder, who was there at the time, who became the kind of focal point from the sidelines, and Craig Campbell and David Hind as well. So if I didn't have that strong support, I definitely wouldn't have been able to do it. I wouldn't have been able to play and do the management. And when it came to the games, the management side of things, almost when the game started, kind of it was left to the other three, and I just concentrated on playing. And then, you know, Dave obviously went to Dubai, and had to move away from Brora. So last season I didn't play an awful lot. I still had, you know, great support from Heinze and Cammy, but I felt that, you know, that I needed to be on the sidelines more than on the pitch. And then over last season, and then again this season, I've just gradually transitioned away from the playing side of things, which, you know, I didn't really want to do, because I just love playing football so much, and I genuinely think that I could probably still play for another year or so. Some of the boys might question that, but it was the right thing to do for the team, rather than me personally. And I guess that's one thing that I'm learning now with being a manager, that you've got to think of the greater good, and you've got to think of what's best for the team. And you know, me playing or me being a player just isn't right for the team, because it would detract from my other responsibilities. So as difficult as it was, kind of hanging the boots up a couple of weeks ago, it was absolutely the right thing to do.
And how do you actually find the whole role and job at managing team, and compare? You know, we were saying at the very beginning, you're doing a very pressurised job as well. How do you balance that up with managing a football club?
Again, it's something that I'm just learning as I go, Donny. It's it does, like we said at the start, it does consume you. I think I underestimated the managerial side of things, and I'm now comfortable with it. I'm totally comfortable with the role, but I didn't really appreciate how much it does consume you in terms of your headspace. Because if it's not work that I'm thinking about, it's Brora. Because as a player, you concentrate on training, you concentrate on preparing right for games and making sure that you're able to perform on a Saturday. But then you become the manager, and not only are you looking at yourself, but you're looking at your management team, you're looking at a squad of 20 players and all the kind of mechanics behind, part-time football and boys working, and boys maybe have some personal issues that you want to help them with, and the time that it takes up in being a part-time manager. I mean, it's classified as a part-time manager, but it's not part-time. It's far from it. It's full-time and it's full on. But again, I love the game. First and foremost, I love the football club that I'm manager of, and you make time for your players, and you make time for the club, and you try and do as much as you can to make sure that we're progressing and moving forward.
Brilliant. It's interesting, Stephen. I was speaking to Craig Brown yesterday, and Craig made a great point. We were speaking about managing or coaching, and he said he believed everyone should manage or coach a part-time club. He said because it's more difficult than coaching pros. He said because they won't they're working and then coming to training. He said if you're giving them rubbish, they just won't do it.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. And you don't have the luxury of being able to plan out your sessions as much as you want, and then when you do plan them, something inevitably is going to change, because you've got your numbers, you've got your lovely session planner. You're going to do this, and this, and then two guys will call you with half an hour notice to say that they're stuck at work, or there's a traffic jam somewhere, and then that's it. The session plan's out the window. You need to be really, really flexible. So I think it's allowed me to do that. Be flexible. And manage my time very, very carefully, because like you say, work has to come first, and that's the priority first and foremost, and work's demanding in itself, but the football is equally as demanding, so you need to be very, very cute in how you manage your time. I know
you're and you've spoken about it earlier, you're really well supported with the guys around you. How important do you think it is to have a good management team within football that complement you?
I think that's fundamental. It's no different to running a business. You want a team around you that will support the overall objectives of the business and help you achieve them. And we've taken that philosophy and kind of mold that into our philosophy at the football club. And that was my first starting point, if you like. Yes, I would review the squad and see what I felt we needed and where we were perhaps short. But my first port call was confirming the management team, and then Cami and Heinze. I've got two guys that I trust implicitly, and that's important for me first and foremost. But I think it's also important for the players, if they see a management team that's close and that they trust each other. We'll also challenge each other and do it on a regular occurrence. I think that's important also, that they do challenge me and they do, if I come out with something or come up with an idea, if they think it's wrong, they'll tell me, and I rely heavily on them from that perspective and take their views equally as well. So I think it works well, but certainly having that closeness and that trust there is absolutely fundamental to what we're trying to do.
That's a great word, isn't it? The trust, I suppose, among everyone as well, to make decisions and challenge each other. So what's on the horizon this coming season for Brora? I know are you playing a shorter season this season?
Yeah, so due to obviously COVID, we're restricted, from a calendar perspective to get all the fixtures squeezed in. So we're just playing each other once this season in the Highland League. So 15 games, we've got 8 away and 7 at home. And it's winner takes all, I guess. It's a condensed season. There's not going to be much room for error. And then hopefully we can achieve what we want to achieve by winning the league. And then there's obviously the playoffs at stake, and hopefully we can get ourselves into the Scottish League, which is where we want to be ultimately.
So is that the ultimate vision, to get into the actual Scottish tiers there? Right,
I think it has to be done. I mean, we love the Highland League and we love what it stands for, but I think with the squad of players that we've got now, the balance of our team has changed quite dramatically over the last few years, where rather than being experienced SPL or Scottish League players, we're now at the opposite end of the scale, where we're still taking players that have been full time, because they come with great habits and disciplines and the professionalism, but they've perhaps not made it quite yet, or not been given the opportunity. So we've got a really hungry squad of young players that want to play Scottish League football. You throw that into the mix with a management team that want to take that squad to the highest level possible, and a board that also want to move the club forward. So there's real ambition between all kind of three aspects of the club to get into the Scottish League. We just need to play our part by doing it on the park.
Great. And what about yourself? What's your ambitions in football going forward?
I think, just like I said there, Donny, is to take Brora into the Scottish League, and try and manage it at the highest level possible. I'm really happy with my day job at the moment. I love working for Langfield, and we've got our own kind of aim in play at the moment, and trying to grow the business in Dunfermline. So that's an objective that I'm aiming towards, and something that I'm enjoying immensely. But I would love to take Brora into the Scottish League and try and manage at the highest possible level.
Well, yeah, I think Langfield would have quite a strong five-a-side team, Dave, would they?
I think they would. You've got Heinze, and you've got young Tom Kelly now that works for us, and Gavin Morrison. So we've got a decent five-a-side team. So we welcome any challenges that are out there.
Brilliant, Steven. So thanks very much for speaking to us. And as I said, it's great to speak to yourself and also hear about what's happening with Brora. So have a good Christmas and catch up with you soon, Steven.
Perfect, Donny. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.